Samvam, this is Shreya from Samaya, and today we are going to discuss SA 250 Consideration of Laws and Regulations in an Audit of Financial Statements. First, we'll see summary of the SA 250. The auditor is required to remain alert, that is, to show professional skepticism throughout the audit to possibility that other audit procedures applied for the purpose of forming an opinion on financial statements. That is, why the auditor had gone for the entity. He had went to form an opinion on the financial statements that were prepared by the management of the entity. So he's applying few audit procedures. In that audit procedure, he came to know that instances of identified and suspected non-compliance. There were few non-compliances. He has to maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. After after such normal applying normal audit procedures, he have found few instances of non-compliance. What he has to do? He has to put some specified audit procedures to assess their impact on the financial statement. This is what generally auditor does. Now we'll see the objectives of the auditor as per SC 250. First, he have to go and obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence regarding compliance with the provisions of those laws and regulations generally recognized to have a direct effect on determination of material amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. Okay, what they're talking about? They're talking why the auditor had gone, why he had gone to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence with what? With regards to the compliance of provisions of compliance of laws and regulations which have a direct effect on material amounts like litigation fees or any kind of profit or disclosures in the financial statements. And to perform specified audit procedures, see, he had he had applied some normal audit procedures and found few instances of non-compliance. Now what he has to do? He has to perform specified audit procedures to help identify instances of non-compliance with other laws and regulations that may have a material effect on financial statements. You have to perform specified audit procedures to find any instance of other laws and regulations which would also have a material effect, and to respond appropriately to non-compliance or suspected non-compliance with laws and regulations identified during the audit. What is our golden rule? Whenever auditor finds any fraud, irregularity, or error, what he has to do? He has to respond to that risk. He has to respond to that risk or error and communicate with to the management unless they were involved in such irregularity or fraud. So here the auditor is responding. And this just a definition. What is the non-compliance? It acts of omission or commission by an entity, either intentional or unintentional. This could be test wide in a examination when in situation based, whether they have the management has no intention to non-compliance, but does that would be a non-compliance or not? Yes, it is a non-compliance, but when it is done intentionally, it is a fraud. When it is done intentionally or unintentionally, it is a non-compliance. They have to face consequences for that. But when it is done under intentional, he has to also face a compliance of fraud also, including non-compliance, or contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations, that they have omitted or committed few missed acts that were intentional or unintentional, which is contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations. And now we'll dive into SA 250. Auditor shall obtain a general understanding of. You see, as per SA 315, on what he has to obtain understanding. He has to obtain understanding on the business environment, including its internal controls. But in SA 250, what he has to obtain understanding of? All the legal and regulatory framework applicable. No, make a note here. This is not a financial reporting framework. This is a legal and regulatory framework as we are considering laws and regulations here. And how the entity is complying with that framework. Okay, whenever we find any rules or regulations that the entity has to follow, what we have to check? We have to check whether they are complying with that or not, and obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence regarding such compliance. This is to obtain audit evidence so that we could uh, go and have conclusions in the audit documentation and then form an audit opinion. Okay, general understanding of the legal and regulatory framework and how the entity was complying that, and sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. And the audit procedures when non-compliance is identified or suspected. These were the specific audit procedures. These were those other, where's here? Yeah, those other audit procedures, and here the specified audit procedures which would be applied when we find any identified or suspected non-compliance. What we have to do? We have to obtain understanding of nature of the act and the circumstances in which it has occurred. See, this is the act of non-compliance. You see, these were the acts plus the circumstances in which it has occurred, like the incentives that it might gain or the pressures it is facing. We have to evaluate that act, that specific act plus circumstances, and further information to evaluate the possible effect on the financial statements. So, see, auditor, everything he has occurred or he has gained all the information in the audit, it all boils down to the financial statement, because he had gone to the entity to form an opinion in the financial statements. So, he has to evaluate the possible effect on the financial statement. Third thing, discuss the matter with the management as with our golden rule. Whenever we find irregularity or non-compliance, we have to discuss with the management and shall consider need to obtain legal evidence. You see, what we need to have an understanding of legal and regulatory framework, not financial framework, which we are specialized in. We have to consider non-compliance of laws and regulations, which we are not specialized in. So we have to take legal advice, that is auditor's expert. Using the work of auditor expert, we could take legal advice if necessary, evaluate the reliability of written representations, and take appropriate actions. You see, whenever we find any fraud or irregularity or any kind of non-compliance in which the management has to do, that's the responsibility of the management to comply with few things or to form an internal control, then what we have to do? We have to check the competence. We have to reevaluate or reconsider the integrity and competence of the management, plus we have to check and evaluate or the reliability of the written representations given by those management, because the fault lies with the management here due by non-compliance of the laws and regulations. And we have to do that, and how to prevent and detect the non-compliance. This is a responsibility of the management. You see, it could be asked like there had been a non-compliance which was unintentional, as we have discussed here, and the management want to rectify it in the next year. They asked the auditor on what ways, how could they prevent and detect the non-compliance. What are the ways that the management could prevent and detect non-compliance? Monitoring legal requirements, ensuring that operating procedures are designed to meet them. You have to design the operating procedures in an entity in such a way that they could meet all the legal requirements for the entity, and put in appropriate systems of internal controls, code of conduct, ensuring employees are properly trained, engaging legal advisors to assist in monitoring legal requirements, maintaining a register of significant laws and regulations with which the entity has to comply. Internal audit function, audit committee, compliance function. Can we remember all this? That's highly impossible, right? We'll figure out how could we write it in an examination. First thing, maintaining a register with all the significant laws and regulations in which the entity has to comply. First, learning the scope or the syllabus kind of thing. If we talk it about students' words, this is so simple to remember. Second thing, these were something which we already know, like internal audit function, audit committee, or compliance function. These are something which we often use in our audit corporate governance chapter or etc. in other companies audit chapter also. So these four are the things that you could remember easily. And internal controls were the responsibility of the management, as we are also discussing about prevention and reduction of non-compliance with the responsibility of the management. This could also be remembered easily. So all these 5 points could be remembered easily. If you could have so much of time and you could remember the other points, you could also remember the other points also. And plus one, as a bonus, you could also remember the legal advisors also here, which this also had been repeated here, from which legal advice is also taken by the auditor. So the management can also take legal advices here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a 6 points. The 6 points could be remembered simply, easily, without no tension, with not so much of effort to be remembered. And with regards to the indications of non-compliance, this is with respective to the auditor's perspective when he gone to audit of an entity. What are the indications of the non-compliance? First, the purchasing prices are significantly above or below the market price. That is, purchasing prices or sale price which were significantly above or below the market price. Those were what? Unusual transactions which companies registered in the tax havens like Mauritius, Dubai, and payments without proper exchange control documentation. Unauthorized transactions or improperly recorded transactions, investigations by regulatory organizations, and adverse media comment. These are all the circumstances which indicate a non compliance. They're talking about the transactions here, and they're talking about the payments without a proper exchange control, like they're just simply giving the payment, like to the foreign operations, etc., without a proper documentation in written, like they're not purchasing any kind of property or bag or goods, or they're not taking services in written, and they're having unauthorized transactions where you see there were few transactions where the board of directors or management has to take prior approval of audit committee before entering into transactions. When they have not taken such kind of approvals, or that those were the unauthorized transactions or improperly recorded transactions or fictitious journal entries, an investigation by regulatory organization by and an adverse media comment. And this is what with regards to SA 215. Happy learning, and do compiler. That's something which would help you a lot in your examination. And moreover, we'll discuss all the important questions and how to write audit answers from April or mid of the April first week. And please do subscribe, and so that it would be helpful for you to have to write your answers in the audit, which would not hold back audit subject. And please do like and share it with your friends. Thank you.